Watch Jefferson climbs the ladder. Oh my goodness! Come on!
Up, jabronis. JJ back here from Run Pure Sports, Run Pure Bets. Talk a little MLB on this fine Saturday. It's actually not so fine for a Saturday. It's very warm. It's very humid. I know, cue the tiny violin, right? So many complaints. What's up, Easy? Always good to see you. Hope all is well. So looking forward to this slate today. I was able to pick up a few wins yesterday in bases. But look, to me, it's just a fucking story that never ends with me in tennis. Just by far my worst ROI betting tennis. Probably since I've started, I guess going back to 2016. So, yeesh. But it just goes to show you, right? Betting sports, it's obviously a constant evolution and a constant, back and forth in terms of, just constantly updating, whether it's use models or algorithms or even the eye test. Like even the people that just blindly use what could be called an eye test to make bets, like even that requires some refining. It's been frustrating to say the least on the tennis front, but needless to say, baseball's been good all year. Joey's been great. I feel like I've been better than above average for sure. You're not going to hear me talk much about that in general, but baseball's been good. But man, tennis has been such a blemish for me, especially on my numbers and my profits. But look, all you can do is kind of, just push forward, right? One foot in front of the other. Glad you like the shirt, Ease. You actually, but you probably expect this by now. I got the matching shorts for it. I'm trying to pull off those Yeezy looks, all I need now is some thicker chains and then we're arm in arm. Paul Hecka. Yeah. I bet, Tommy Paul, it's a good matchup for him. Two similar type players. Both obviously above average on grass. It's been nice to see Tommy Paul kind of elevate his game a bit. I've always been a Tommy Paul guy. He's a bit too erratic mentally, but it's been nice, especially obviously he's a USA player. So it's been nice to see him kind of, I don't want to call it come up because he's obviously been up for a while, but he's been climbing ranks higher and higher. And I think he's starting into territory that he's never been in before as far as his ATP rank. So nice to see him do well. I tend to never win bets betting on him, but needless to say, he's definitely been improving a ton. So very nice to see there. As far as baseball, interesting slate. I do like the fact that, and I think I mention this every week when they do it, you got 4 games before 4:00 today. Nice to have. I feel like we don't really get this as often. But what DraftKings did today was interesting to me because they decided to merge all the 1:00 and the 4:00 in one slate and then call it their main slate. Seemed a little weird, to be honest. You had 3-hour gap between the bulk of the games. Some people might like it. Some people might love it. I'm really not a fan. I wish they kind of split the slate and then just kept their main slate the 4:00 one because you'd have 6 games in the 4:00 slate. But it is what it is. But it does give you flexibility if you don't like anybody in the earlies to just kind of, enter contests, leave your lineups running. So I'll talk a little DFS. I'll talk some bets I made. I bet 2 games today. And I'll give you some, I guess what could be called leans. I even hate that word these days, but I'll call it spots that I was close to firing on. But as you folks know, it's a numbers game. So look, without further ado, we could just dive right in, right? And I assume maybe you guys can comment in the chat. I try to make these shows a lot about bets, a little bit about DFS. If today, you have any DFS questions or anything, I'm happy to entertain them and talk a little more on DFS if you'd like me to. Obviously, I just try to move the show along. And I know this is supposed to be a true betting show, but as you guys know, happy to talk plenty of DFS in terms of ownership, stacks that make sense, stacks that don't make sense, chalk, the whole bit. Let me just make sure I sort my Saber stuff so that's easy to reference for me on this video. All right, so let's talk game 1. And it looks like we finally got the Yanks back in this 1:00 slot. Now, I'm not sure if it happened last week. I was out of town last week. But I think that out of town visiting the Pops, not like I'm making like this important person, out of town visiting old Father Time. He's good, by the way. He's okay. Garrett Cole versus the Cubbies, Drew Smyly. Look, all the credit in the world to Drew Smyly. This dude used to be a gas can years ago, finally found himself. Lefty with a ton of K upside, especially for the stuff that he has. It's always nice to see guys like him do well. Obviously a bit of a mismatch here with going up against Cole and the Yanks, but the Yanks I've had an interesting year to say the least. The fact that they're 7 games over 500, I actually think is pretty impressive, all things considered. They've been missing Judge, pound for pound, the most important player to this team, or most important player to a team in baseball. I mean, granted, we could argue Ohtani, but there's also like the arguably, first, second, third best players in the league. 2 of them are on the Angels. So I wouldn't say that one of them is that important to the other team, but Judge is by far the best player on the Yanks. And he's been out quite a bit this year. Despite that, they still have decent record. They've had good pitching. Their bullpen's been a bit erratic. But, as I look at their lineup today, it looks like it's gotten a little better, I guess. LeMahieu's been in just a crazy slump. Not like the Cubs bring much more to the table either. But look, it's very warm today. And I'm sure there's going to be some carry in that stadium, whether there's wind pushing it or not. You take a humid game in Yankee Stadium, and the ball is just undoubtedly going to carry out. It's probably why you're seeing a total of 8.5. Despite 2 above average arms. I will say that with these 2 arms, I can't go to the well with an over, especially when you look at the lineups. Obviously, one side missing Judge. Nothing about the Cubs lineup really truly scares me, especially when a right-hander's on the mound. I'm a little more flexible as far as how targeting the Cubs bats when they're going up against a lefty, but this team pulls in a lot of righties, and their lefties aren't. I mean, you got Talkman leading off, like a former Yank. But so as far as this game goes, I don't love anything about it. Priced about right, maybe a little too heavy on the Yanks end. Isn't it interesting how much when Yankee pitchers leave the organization, how when they go pitch against the Yankees, how good they are? I mean, Jordan Montgomery's already had like 2 or 3 great starts against the Yanks. Jamison Tyone looked unhittable, and he's had a terrible year. Montgomery's had an year. He's been kind of bouncing back lately, but it's crazy. You throw these guys back against the Yanks, and they look like Hall of Famers. So yeah, nothing I love about this game. As far as DFS, sorry guys, good old ESPN firing up random videos. All right, so and before you're like, oh, you're playing that song, you must not be on ESPN, bro. Turn ESPN on and watch the ad before a video comes out. It's going to be that song. So, all right, for pitching today, I know Gosman's going to be super popular. Obviously, Cole will be probably a little less popular. Obviously, seeing Braxton Garrett pop, which is to me interesting at his price, because at the end of the day, right, with DFS, and I think this is what so often people get lost in translation on, climbing that price ladder with pitching, James Paxton 10-5. Now, at least James Paxton at 10-5 is a crazy price, but at least he has like a nut matchup. When you start paying up for pitching and they're in not so good matchups like him against Philly, it's hard to just love it. And I'm not saying it's a terrible matchup for Garrett, but at 9,600, woof, and a 20% ownership, another woof. Tough to love. But in regards to this, yeah, I think Cole is, I don't call him safe, but he's relatively safe. I'll be honest, I'd rather play Cole at home than Gosman on the road, especially with Gosman likely going to see a little more ownership. But it's not like Cole's been like, wow, he's definitely been getting hit lately. He can be hit and miss at times. He has an issue with the home run ball, but he's cheaper than Gosman, and it's surprising that Gosman, despite that, still going to be higher owned as far as projections go. So yeah, definitely prefer Cole over Gosman. We'll talk more on that as we go through the slate. And Suarez, I'll get to as well. Just a tough to love spot. Well, let me be more quick. Tough to love from my perspective. Ranger Suarez is a guy that people didn't want to pay when he was $7K. Now he's 8.7, and some folks might line up to play him. But I'll talk on that when I get to that game. But don't really love anything about this game as mentioned. As far as bats go, I think you can target a few Yanks righties just because on the price spectrum, you can definitely get some guys that are relatively cost effective. Okay, Volpe leading off at 36. You can easily pair him with Torres or just go 1-3 with him and Stanton. At least you got Stanton, who's obviously been a notorious lefty killer, and you get Volpe from the right side. So I definitely don't mind the Stanton Volpe combo. And I don't think they're going to see crazy ownership either. But I would play nobody from the Cubs. I get it. It's a decent leverage spot. But Volpe's going to see about 10% ownership. Stanton's going to see like 7% ownership, which, again, I know he's been slumping all year, but you do get him against the lefty at a relatively cheap price. So I do like that. All right, so we'll move on to the next game. I obviously did not make any bets there. Tigers, Blue Jays. So Kevin Gausman, who has been a strikeout machine this year, which is probably why people are lining up to play him today. However, it's not like the Tigers are this like heavy K bunch. Now, granted, obviously guys like Baez are definitely guys that could end up K'ing, 3 times today. But I don't mind. I don't mind going with Blue Jays bats here. Again, another spot where Jays bats are going to be popular. I just think you pick your poison, right? If you're gonna play Cole, I think you pair Cole with a few Yankees bats. And the reason I say is just be a little different, right? People are going to play Cole, Blue Jays bats. People are going to play Gosman, they're going to play some Yankees bats. I think that if you're going to target anything in this early slate, especially these 1 o'clocks, I think you go double on it. It'll make you a little different because everybody, like for the most part, people are allergic to playing pitchers with multiple bats. So I do think it makes you a little different on a wider slate. So yeah, I don't mind that at all. As far as the game though, I did want to lean under on the total. It just scares me. Manning is a scary pitcher to hope he gets out of every jam. His whip is crazy. So I don't love. I was kind of convinced off the spot of the under the more I looked at it. But yeah, call it a very light word I hate lean on the under at 8. But absolutely don't love this at all. So look, we'll move on. We'll move on to the next game. Sonny Gray, Tyler Wells. I know somebody just had a comment on Wells. I think Wells has been great, to say the least. You're talking a guy that's piling up innings with what is he number 1 in baseball in WHIP? He might be. So the fact that his ERA is where it is, despite his WHIP being what it is, would definitely indicate he's had a little struggle with the home run ball, and maybe a little struggle with throwing from the stretch. But either way, WHIP's phenomenal, and the Ks aren't bad either. So for me, no, I don't dislike the spot at all. I think that Sonny Gray is a home favorite because he's Sonny Gray and he's been pitching great and he's home. But yeah, Wells has been phenomenal for this group. I think he's been a lot more than they expected him to be. And let me just peek Wells's ownership because everything's about leverage and ownership from the way you approach building lineup, especially if you hand build. And it obviously gets even more concentrated if you're using simulators because then you're really trying to hone in on where you want your ownership leverage spots. So he's going to be about 18 to 20% owned. I'll be honest, I don't love that. Considering Sonny Gray is going to be 13% owned, 13, 14% owned, a little less. But look, we know the upside's there. He's great against right-handed bats, and that's what the Twins bring to town every game they play. Let me just look at what these lineups look like real quick. Yeah, I mean, your Twins, they platooned a few lefties, but for the most part, this is all. And I actually can't even say they platooned because these are their normal lefty guys that they have in the lineup. Just a lot of right-handed bats, and Tyler Wells is elite against right-handed pitching. This could be a spot where you could make an argument for the under. However, total of 8 with the sticks that exist on both these squads doesn't make you feel great about playing a total here, especially when you have two like really good pitchers. I wouldn't call them great pitchers. So kind of indifferent on the total. I think there's probably some value on Wells as a dog. But as far as, DFS goes, I think you should have some Wells, but I think you should have a little more Sonny Gray just because I understand Wells has more upside with the Ks, but just because of the ownership leverage spots. So yeah, obviously, you use that as you'd like, but, and if the bat has him 15%, bat has Tyler Wells 15%. Yeah. So it's not like he's going under the radar. And because he's 9K, probably one of the cheaper pitchers people are going to go to. I mean, because Andrew Heaney, if people are going to drop down and play Heaney at 82, wow, that feels ballsy in a 90-plus degree day in Washington. So no, I won't. We'll talk to that game. I'll get to that game, but I would have no Andrew Heaney today. Absolutely no Andrew Heaney. So I would play Wells. I'd play a little more Gray, and I guess we'll just move on to the next game. All right, so Cardinals White Sox. What an interesting game yesterday, right? I think the Cardinals were up 5 or 6 runs. They still lost because of the bullpens. It's almost felt like the Cardinals, who are now, 16, 17 games under 500, man, they can't ever get things together in a row. They had a little bit of a streak, I think, over a month ago, but they just can't get things collectively. Like they can't get hitting, pitching, and starting pitching and bullpen right for multiple games in a row. It feels like there are some times where their sticks go crazy for a week. Sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to get off the ESPN page, to be honest, if it's gonna keep doing this. All right, so for me, it's been tough to watch them, right? But that whole NL Central has just been a dumpster fire. I know the Reds have been trending a ton, so that's great. but they just feel like a team that's gonna be fading, right? They don't have the pitching, and it just feels like it's only a matter of time before that starts to bite them. But needless to say, Reds are probably in first in that division now, right? Probably. Either way, Cards have really underachieved. I know it's a long season. There's still time to correct things if they were to go on a big run, but man, it feels like they're drawn dead. In this matchup, Miles Mikolas unplayable. Let me just quick peek projections on him, but even at 7-3, this matchup's unplayable. I can play Mikolas in a decent matchup when he's mid sixes. This guy has no K upside, right? So it makes it very tough to warrant playing him at any level. And the Toussaint kid, obviously is unplayable. The guy's not going to pitch more than 50, 60 pitches, glorified relief guy. They might pop him back up a bit as far as his pitch count as he goes along, but he, again, glorified bullpen guy, makes it easy to fade him in DFS. And at 5,900, he's going to need to be a little more than a bullpen, glorified bullpen guy for you. Total of 10. So this game's heavily targetable with the bats. My issue with betting wise here is I don't ever bet a total over at 10 at this park. It's kind of, we'll call it my eclipse. But because from a dimension standpoint, this park does not carry many totals of 10. I get it. It's warm. I get it. The removing of the shifts. I get it. The pitch clock has enhanced runs. However, big number for this park, despite that. I know it's warm, but it's not 95-degree warm. So, yeah. And you got Mikolas, a big ground ball pitcher, too. I want to play the under, but, man, the ball is going to carry at this park today. So, and you got bats on both sides that can hit home runs. So, arrows going both directions for me. I can't lay 130 with the Cardinals, though. So, that becomes another easy spot for me to stay away. But with all that said, I do think you should have a few bats from both these squads. I know that's not even a hot take, right? Because I'm sure these bats are going to be trendy, but definitely mix and match some bats from this game because you are going to get some serious carry in that park, which obviously will lead to some home runs. Giants, is that the next game I got up? Giants, Rockies? Yeah, Giants, Rockies, 405. So Connor Seabold got his ass lit up last time out in Coors. I think he gave up, 9 earned in 3 innings, something like that. And it was a lot of home runs. I know the Javi Baez grand slam in the first inning. Ryan Walker, another bullpen day for San Francisco. So obviously easy to not play him. As far as this is another total, right? Another game where you have a total of 9 in a park that really doesn't warrant totals this big, right? So just even at a surface level, I have to lean the under. I don't care who's pitching. You just don't see many 9s at this park. It's also going to be, dare I say, chilly in San Francisco, mild 50 degrees. So yeah, you're just not going to get much pull. This is the type of start that could make bad pitchers look really good. It's actually a decent bounce back spot for Seabold, pitching in a bigger park, but man, is he tough to watch pitch. So if you are going to bet anything relative to unders in this game, do yourself a favor and don't even watch it. In relation to pricing here of some guys, look, I'm going to be honest. I know it's a bit of a hot take, but 5,300 Connor Seabold in this park is not totally a terrible option. And obviously this guy's not going to win you a ton of money, but this is a guy with 15, 20 point upside. And I'll tell you this, you get 15 from Connor Seabold at 53, you're okay with that. And God forbid you get a 6-inning start from him, where he slides you almost 20. It's not terrible. He doesn't really strike a ton of guys out either, but again, he's 5,300. That's what so many people look at. You get a guy that in theory could go 5-6 innings. And by the way, he often does, despite giving up 8 runs in a few innings last time out. He kind of cleaned himself up a bit the last 2, and they obviously keep a long leash on him. So not a terrible look at all. His ownership's going to be, 4%. And again, a slate like this where, especially if you're going to play one big arm, it's not a crazy pairing to take him with him or with you on your routes. And again, I know it sounds like a hot take, but I don't even look at it as a hot take. 5,300, he's not going to have to do much. He pitches 5 innings almost every start, and he's in a big park. He's playing a team that doesn't have too many threats. So, yeah, I actually like the spot for him. Let's see. Oh, what's up, Jacob? We'll do a quick shout-out to some chats. Skylar, Andrew, I'll talk on Suarez. I think I already mentioned that. What's up, Jacob? Andrew, look at that A's lineup. Dunkel looks like trash. Yeah, I bet I bet. So then again, when does the A's lineup not look like trash, right? So yeah, I mean, I'll talk more on that when I get to Paxton in terms of climbing the price ladder with a guy. But at the same time, if the guy's in a nut matchup, it's not. It could obviously weigh it out. So Paxton's definitely somebody even at the price that I definitely would consider playing today. Let's see. Official Rick Ross, would you hold Yuri in fantasy? You've already clinched playoffs. Also JP. So I assume you're talking like season longs or maybe fantasy. I mean, not season long fantasy, dynasty leagues. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, I think Yuri Perez is definitely a good guy to make sure you hold on to. He's looked really good. Now, granted, we've already talked, especially on the Sunday shows, about how regression is likely en route, but he's still been really good, and he pitches in a great park, so no reason to think that changes, at least in the near future. Yes, NASCAR finally got a normal track. Excited for that. I took last week off because I was away. Gavin Williams, so I'll get to him as well. I don't honestly. I know it might be another hot take. I don't like Gavin Williams, but I'll talk more on that. So who's coming to pitch after Walker, Minaya, or Wood? Woof. I know it sounds silly. I'd hope neither. Alex Wood is such a trash can. And Sean Minaya, while he has K upside, he also gives up a ton of hard contact. So honestly, I'm not really in love with either. So I could really care less. I know it might not be the answer you want to hear, but I really don't think it matters. As far as rain delays, I don't think you're at risk with any games. I guess potentially there could be some rain in New York, but it would likely come into deeper into the game if it was going to happen. And it's not supposed to be heavy either, which would make you think they wouldn't to delay it. But I mean, look, we've seen crazier things happen, right? Not totally, can't totally be convinced there won't be rain, but that would be the one game I think where you could see some rain. All right, so let's go on Nationals Rangers game. This game's going to likely be very trendy with bats, very trendy with stacks. The fact that I see Andrew Heaney at 14%, projected 14% ownership is crazy because it's 90 plus degrees in this park with humidity, with wind blowing out to left. This is a big number for this park, granted 10.5, but I've definitely seen 11s at this park before. And this is like a nut weather game for this park. Irvin is likely to give up quite a few hard shots to this Texas group who just hits everybody. So yeah, I think Texas is a great stack. Problem is you're gonna pay money for that stack, right? Like it's not like you're getting that stack on a clearance rack. Basically up and down, these bats are 6K, high 5K. And I don't know if we have an official lineup just yet with them. I don't think we do, but their lineup's relatively predictable daily, so you can kind of have a good idea of where it's going to be. But again, I think it's a great stack, and I think because they're high priced, I think it's an even greater stack because it's just going to push people off them. Now, granted, they're still going to see ownership. I want to be very clear. I'm just trying to see exactly where we're at. It's looking like sub 12 to 15% ownership on some of these guys. But again, it is hard to get your pitchers that you want and play these bats. So insert a guy like Connor Siebold to give you, that little happy medium. But yeah, obviously no pitchers from this game from me. As far as bats go, I think Nats bats are very targetable. And as I look at, let me just pull up Nats projections ownership wise from top to bottom. You're talking sub 5-6% ownership, which it'll probably be a little higher than that. But man, I'd argue the Nationals have just as much opportunity to score runs today as Texas does, and their percentage is cheaper. Undoubted cheaper. So, as you look up the hitters here, Candelario's potentially going to be out. So if he's out, it's 3,500 for the rest of this lineup, excluding Lane Thomas. Just based on that alone would make them my by far favorite stack of this slate. You can get your big pitchers. You can overly stack Washington. I'd even go crazy. I'd even stack Washington without a single Texas bat because Texas bats can get there. And you can still out leverage them with having Nat stacks because of how cheap they are. I do think, as mentioned, it makes a ton of sense to play Texas. And if you play Texas, I think you should play them with some Washington bats. But if you overly stack Washington, you want to be very different. Don't play a single Texas bat. So again, I'm an MME guy. I multi-enter a lot of tournaments. So you're going to hear me say different things as I go through the show. But again, it's all about constructing lineups with a thought in mind. You're almost like, I don't want to say you're like building a building a story per se, but you're building a script that's different than the scripts that you're going to see across the board in your player pools. I mean, in your competition pools with other names, right? Other players you're going against. So I mentioned a few different ways to target this game. And I think the Nats ownership is going to be a little higher than what I'm seeing projection wise. I'll let you guys correct me if I'm wrong there, but tough not to love Washington Sticks today. All right. So we'll move on to next game up. Guardians Royals. So I did make a bet in this game. Gavin Williams, Brady Singer, total 8.5. I bet this over 8.5, and I absolutely love this over 8.5. Now, for those that watched the show, I think it was Saturday 2 weeks ago. It may have been a Sunday, but I think it was a Saturday 2 weeks ago. The Guardians were at the Royals, and the total was 9.5. And I don't remember if I bet the first 5 under 5.5, but I think I bet the full game under 9.5. The game ended 2-1, and I'm a Brady Singer guy, okay? But remember, this is still a numbers game, okay? That total was 9.5 in what I would consider to be a relatively even park in Kansas City. Now, I get 8.5 at plus 100. I had to lay vig on the under 9.5 minus 115, I think it was. Now I'm getting plus money at 8.5 to go over in a very similar park in warmer weather. So for me, this is like an automatic bet. And again, this goes back. This should prove to you guys that I don't have biases in any direction. It's just pure numbers. These two meet 2 weeks ago. Totals 9.5. Slides way under. Now this goes way in reverse. A full run plus vig, so that I can get this plus 100 over 8.5. Same pitching matchup. Same collective average pens at best. Obviously, the Guardians have a great pen, but the Royals do not. So two pitchers that don't exactly eat innings. Love the spot. So I think there's going to be a ton of foot traffic. And I'll be honest. I thought there would be a decent amount of foot traffic when I had total 9.5. But what did I have? Right, I had the extra run of padding in my favor. So now I think they've over-adjusted this too far. So I really like that spot over 8.5 Guardians Royals. And I also think because people like the pitchers from this match, I think it's a great leverage spot to take bats. I will not play any of these pitchers from this match. Let me just pull up while we're on the topic of ownership. Let's pull up what we're looking at here for exact projections on ownership for both of these dudes. 10%, nobody's going to play Brady Singer, which is fine. 61, you really can't play him. Gavin Williams at 7K, no thank you. So easy fade for me there. And as far as bats go, talking a game that's going to have next to no ownership. Okay, Jose Ramirez always sees ownership, so he's going to see some, but no one's going to play these bats in this game, and I think it's a great spot to play them. You have a warm weather game. You have mid pitchers at best. And this total is not too far off from some of these others, and I really like runs in this spot. So I know that when you target Cleveland, they don't hit home runs, and when you target the Royals, they also don't hit home runs. But I think you can go mini stacks on both sides. They're cheap, or as the business folks call it, cost effective. So yeah, I actually really like stacking this game as a true leverage. And I know that I talked on really liking the Rangers-Nats games, but everybody's going to like stacking that game. I gave you examples of how you can pivot leverage-wise off of a game that's going to be a popular stack. Royals-Guardians is not going to be a popular stack, and I really like the opportunity for runs in that game. A lot of foot traffic. We can get a few balls to leave the yard in warm weather. I think we'll be really golden for that to go over. So yeah, I have that line over a half run off. Total should have been 9 at like minus 110, minus 115-ish. Instead, I get 8.5. I'm able to go over at plus 100. Love the spot. I think we get a ton of edge there. All right, so Brewers, Reds. Luke Weaver, Colin Rea. Yeah, another start with two bad arms. I'm sure people will play bats from this game. I actually don't like this game as much for bats. I think the Reds are streaking again, right? They've won a few in a row. I think they lost yesterday, though, but before that, they were winning like four or five in a row, maybe more. Corbin Burns gets a win. Of course, he gets a win because I didn't bet him. I've lost so much money betting Corbin Burns. Luke Weaver has been bad, but he hasn't been as bad as he's looked. And the Brewers have these weird spells where they just look terrible against mid-arms. I'm not a Colin Rea guy. I know he's thrown, I think, back-to-back really good starts. I can care less. But this is a big number for this park. So, no, I don't love anything about the total. I wouldn't be surprised if there was 12 runs. I wouldn't be surprised if there was 3 runs today. Obviously, Brewers' pen has to be in the conversation for when it gets handed off to them. But look, the Reds have been trending. The Reds have been playing really well. I don't think it sustains, but they've been playing really well. It's hard to ignore. I also can't lay 130 with Rhea against a team that's hitting. So, I lean the Reds, but I don't love the spot, to be honest. So, yeah, I don't love anything about this game. This will be just a total fade for me on the DFS end, total fade for me on the betting end. Don't want to target pitchers. I don't want to target bats. So, yeah, easy move on. And, yes, this game will see some ownership on the bats. So, I can kind of pivot away that way. So we'll talk on the Red Sox A's. Obviously, big Maple, James Paxton. Now, let me see what he's coming in ownership-wise, because I would argue he should never be priced this high. But as far as what we're looking at in relation to his ownership, so looking like a little over 20% ownership. Yes, and I agree. This is a nut spot in terms of the matchup, right? You look at this lineup for the A's, and while you don't really ever expect the A's to have a good lineup anyway, does anybody even know half these dudes? Like, it's kind of crazy the lineup this team's putting out every day. But yes, so it's a really good spot for Paxton, and the concern is just the price, right? Like, he's 10-5, so the guy basically needs to get you 27, 28, and I know he's done that 2 of his last 4 starts. He got close to it in a start in the middle of that as well. He had the bad start against the White Sox, which is when people first wanted to start climbing the price ladder with this dude. Pitch is really good at Toronto. Pitch count's no issue. Now, the concern is just the ownership, right? Like, and the price, right? So this is now the top dollar you would pay for James Paxton all year. But he's been really good, right? Strikeouts have been good. I know his Vigo's up as well to what it was from previous years. So, yeah, I think you should have some Paxton. Don't go overboard with it, because it's already going to be a decently chalked option anyway. But again, out of the 3 of them, I still prefer Cole the most, because I don't want to say he's being looked past, but this would be a spot where normally you would expect Cole to see a good amount of ownership, especially at his price. And it looks like Gosman's obviously going to see higher. And yeah, I just think it's a really good spot for Cole. I know he's been tough to watch. I know his Ks have been somewhat down, and look, his Ks are good, but they're not as good as they used to be. He's not eating innings the way he once did. He's typically seen six innings now. But yeah, from a leverage perspective, I do like Cole at a lower ownership number than what he should be. So Cole's my favorite of the 3. Next in line would be Paxton, and Gosman for me is just a complete fade at that price. He beats me. But for him to beat me, he's going to need, he's going to need like a 28, 29 burger at this price. Unless you find a bunch of perfect sticks to combine him with. It's just you really want to try to get near 3x with these dudes. And you can argue for 2.5x, which is fine, but Gosman at 11.5 just needs a stellar performance. And 11.5, by the way, mind you, max dollar for Kevin Gosman for the season. So again, how often do you really want to keep climbing these price ladders with these dudes? All right, so talked on that. The Athletics, I don't know. I don't want to target anybody. Obviously, want no part of Blackburn. He doesn't strike anybody out. Even at his cheap price, won't matter. So Marlins, Phillies, 2 pitchers that see some interesting traction, right? Remember when Ranger Suarez was like everybody's target? Let's just keep targeting Ranger Suarez. And yeah, how do you think that's been going for everybody that's been overly targeting Mr. Suarez lately? Because he's been really good. I know that he had a bad start his last time out, but before that, what did he have? Like 6 or 7 straight 6-inning, 1 earned run, something like that. Like just a crazy tear for him to have a bad start. And what do they follow up that bad start with? A max dollar price for Ranger Suarez. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like paying max dollar for a guy like him. People didn't want to pay the price. People were targeting this dude when he was 6K, 7K. So he was in the 5K range. Nobody wanted to play him. And now he's 8-7, and people want to play Ranger Suarez. So I get he's been pitching really well. You kind of have to, evolve your numbers around. Going to be sub 10% owned. Great park he's pitching in today. Great lineup he gets to pitch against today, which is obviously a plus for him. But yeah, no Ranger Suarez for me. I would let him beat me. Braxton Garrett, I could be convinced into. I do like Garrett. I do like his K upside. However, the price, Again, I talked on this when the show started. Another guy that is a price that's not a fun price. Another guy that you are paying max dollar for the season. It's like, at what point in your own methodology of how you play DFS for MLB, at some point there has to be rational logic that tells you there are certain price points you will pay certain pitchers for based on the lineup and park they're playing in, right? I don't think there's any lineup that warrants a lot of ownership for Braxton Garrett at 9.6. I get it. He's got the great park behind him, but he will be facing a tough lineup today. And at 9.6, man, that is tough to warrant loving Braxton Garrett. I think you can play a little bit of him. I think the matchup is good. I just think the price is not. So makes it really tough to go to that well. The guy was priced $9,500 at home against St. Louis, and he's priced higher now against more competent bats in Philly. He didn't pitch well against St. Louis either, by the way. But where has he pitched well? He's pitched well against dog shit teams. He's pitched well against Pittsburgh. He's pitched well against Washington. He pitched well against the White Sox, which I'll give him credit. That's a good start. They have a lot of big righties. The lefties have been his demise at times. But for the most part, this dude has pitched relatively well against bad hitting teams. Phillies bring a ton of righties to town. It's a tough matchup for him. So stay away from me on both spots. I don't want any bats here. The park's very forgiving. So this is just a total fade for me. I don't want pitchers. I don't want bats. I hope all this stuff makes sense. Look at this guy. So Ringo Starr, bunch of drug addicts. Look, I'll be honest. I could respect obviously whatever anybody's saying, but in Rolling Thunder, I'm not sure who this is either, but look, again, I respect it. I try to talk on DFS lingo, DFS logistics, obviously betting logistics. If you don't like it, you can easily walk out. Trust my feelings won't get hurt, my man. All right, so let's move on to the next game. Pirates Diamondbacks. So Mitch Keller, by the way, the Diamondbacks recently alerted who they were going to start for this game. They are going with Kyle Nelson. As of when I was reviewing these games around 9:30, 10-ish, the Diamondbacks did not have a starter referenced. So at least now we have Kyle Nelson, who I'll be honest, I don't know much about. Obviously, younger guy, another glorified pen guy, but he does come from the left side, which is good for the Pirates, who at least have some relatively decent right-handed sticks. Mitch Keller's been great all year. However, this is a tough spot start for him on the road. As far as ownership-wise goes for Keller, let me see. So that's so interesting, right? He's 9,800 and he's going to be 5% owned, which is kind of scary in a way because when this dude was priced a little lower, he was seeing much more ownership daily on slates. So the fact that he's now sitting at what looks to be 5 to 6% ownership, it's actually kind of weird. But we do know, at least with Keller, you get decent upside. So like out of these 9K guys that I've already mentioned, in terms of leverage pivots, I think Keller's a great leverage pivot for this slate, especially for the full early slate. Obviously, if you mix and match slates where you just play the 4 o'clocks, but we obviously know the upside Keller brings. He's got good K upside. I really like him as a pivot off of some of these other dudes. And again, if you're looking for me to sit here and reel you off who the chalk options are, and oh my God, I love Kevin Gausman so much today because everybody fucking loves Kevin Gausman today. You're just never going to hear that from me. So you're always going to hear where I like to target. I'm an MME guy where I like to target pivot spots, places to be different, right? I think Mitch Keller's in a really good spot. I think Mitch Keller's in a really good spot to pivot off of other guys in that high 9K range. And by the way, if you don't think I know anything about DFS, just go ahead and check out RotoGrinders. You could see my DFS ranking there, pal. It's not gonna hurt my feelings for you to go up and look at it. So yeah, either way, always appreciate folks coming in, speaking transparency. And look, I wish you the best, Rolling Thunder. But if you're just gonna be a douche, I'm just gonna block you. You've gotten your point across, my friend. All right, so we'll move on to the next game. Rays Braves. Spencer Strider for the Braves. Now I will tell you this: the Braves were minus 155 a few hours ago. They've obviously peaked up to minus 165. Taj Bradley for the Rays, though, is somebody that I really can't figure out. This guy got mauled in Double-A this year. Mauled in Double-A. Comes to the majors, throws 50-plus innings, and he's looked really good. Like, his advanced numbers even back him up. However, this start is really tough to love him. Now, I know that everybody loves to line up to the well to bet first 5 run lines with Spencer Strider, right? He's your typical sexy pitcher, gets a ton of Ks. He went through a little bit of a dry spell for a bit before finding himself again. And look, I'll be honest, it goes without saying, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. But wow, is this a lot of respect? laying 160 on the road against, who's been the best American League team all year long. Now, the issue I have, though, with the Rays is this week in particular, they are not hitting at all. At all. I think are they on a 6-game losing streak? 5 or 6 game losing streak? I'd have to confirm it. But I know from a hitting perspective, they are just not scoring runs at all. So I do lean the under. However, a total of 8 with these two arms, with the way the Pens took a taxing yesterday, is hard to line up to love to bet the under. I think you can target the first 5 under 4.5. It's just my issue. The issue with Strider has been what? It's been walks and occasional home runs. And the Rays can certainly hit home runs. I know that they've been slacking with the bats. But as far as the late slate goes, look, Strider is going to see ownership because of, you look at the slate from a K upside perspective, he's going to see ownership. But however, the good part about the late slate is you have a lot of decent guys to choose from. Like you can be convinced into almost any of these pitchers, really, except for Detmers. The only reason I would even argue that you could target Peterson is just because he's cheap. And like, I know the matchup's not great, but he's in a forgiving park. And the thing with Peterson is like, despite his ERA being high, the dude still wakes up with bird shit on his windshield. He seems to get it out of so many jams. And you wouldn't even think that because his ERA is so high, but just watch him pitch. Like, it's like the dude's ERA should probably be 10. But needless to say, in relation to this game, decent size number for this park. But I mentioned yesterday, I bet the total under 8.5. Obviously, it felt like a cruise control win end to end with a few home runs, which were the total runs for the game. But the difference between this start and yesterday's start is both teams taxed their pens yesterday. They might go right back to the same pen arms, but you're basically going to need a decent outing from both these arms. And again, a total of 8, you can accidentally get 8 runs. I mean, if the game's 3-3 in the 8th, you tie that game up with a few runs late in the game, and boom, that poofs over. Or extra innings with the way it works in this new day and age of baseball. Extra innings is what won me the Mets game yesterday total. So I just don't always like betting overs of 8. Especially with bats like this. So stay away there. As far as Strider goes, obviously everybody lines up to bet him first 5. I think it's a little padded, but I will stay away there. Astros, Mariners. So Framber Valdez is in what I would consider a decent spot here. However, if you guys have seen the Astros lineup on a daily basis, it is woof levels. No Altuve, no Alvarez. It's been tough to watch this group. But look, they still find ways to churn wins. Luis Castillo pitched really good yesterday. Big win for the Mariners. I know they piled up a ton of runs. With the line, with the way it is, I do lean Valdez. I think it's a lot of respect for Wu, who, if you remember, I think his first start, he got ripped apart, and then he started going into a bit of cruise control. Runs here and there, of course, but it's a lot of respect for Wu. And I know that the Astros lineup's not there, but Valdez is a better arm. The Mariners probably have a slightly better lineup these days because of what the Astros are dealing with injury-wise, but the Astros do have a better pen. So, yeah, and the Astros are home. So, slightly in that -125. I don't love the price, though. I do think this line – I just wish this line was a little less just because of the Astros bats. But, again, line being what it is still earns a lot of respect for Wu. So, slight lean, but obviously don't love the spot. Now, on the Dodgers end, it doesn't look like we have an announced pitcher yet. I don't know if anybody knows who that's going to be. Obviously, you're not going to see me try to cap a game where the pitcher's unlisted. Reed Detmers, I think this is a bad spot for Detmers. So I like Detmers, but it's a bad spot for Detmers. Dodgers bring to town a ton of righties. He's pitching on the road. It's going to be warm in LA tonight. So I would say I lean the over, but I have no idea who's pitching for the Dodgers. How could I even say that, right? So easy game for me to move on. Obviously, in due time, we'll have who's announced, and maybe you guys mentioned it. But all right, we'll move on. All right, so Padres, Mets, Blake Snell, David Peterson. I did bet this game. In favor of the Mets. So I bet the Mets over their team total at 3.5 plus 100. Reason I love it is because the Mets are hitting. The Mets have been hitting. The Mets have had 4 runs in 6 of their last 7 games. And look, I get it. Blake Snell's been really good. However, the issue with Snell is he's almost been too good, where this price is now moving too far in his favor. As a market fluctuates with betting, as I often say, it's always a numbers game. You bob, you weave, you move left, right. The Blake Snell being -170 against the Mets is like way over what that should be. And I want to bet the Mets. However, I do have a lot of fears for Peterson, right? So for me, I think the safest bet here, Mets over 3.5 team total. All I need really is Snell to give up 1 or 2 runs if he goes over 5 or 6. And he's not a guy that eats innings anyway, typically good for 6 innings on a peak end. And the bullpens in this game took an absolute taxing, especially on the San Diego side. Game went into extras. And I think there's a lot of favors here, a lot of things that favor the Mets here. You're guaranteed your 9 at bats, 3.5 plus 100. I like Blake Snell when I can get him at pick'em spots. I like Blake Snell when I can get him, especially at home in pick'em spots. Minus 170 against a Mets team that's hitting is it just feels too padded. But Peterson scares me too much, and so I just want to target the Mets end. So I went over 3.5 team total plus 100. I wish you guys. You know what's funny? It almost looks like folks in here just kind of like randomly decided to nitpick. I don't. Obviously, it is what it is. You're not going to hurt my feelings. But it's funny how that's kind of all the same comments. Almost maybe some people might call them trap accounts or burner accounts. But it's all good, folks. Trust me. Feelings not hurt. I wish you guys the best. I wish you guys find happiness in whatever version of happiness means to you guys. But look, with all that said, I gave you guys the 2 bets for the day. Talked a little DFS. Wish you guys the best. Gamble responsibly. Stay safe. And as always, run pure.